So what we're going to do today is pull the radiator fans and the condenser out so we can get this condenser off to a repair shop. So here's what I'm talking about before I ever even get it out. You notice that we've got some kind of darker areas here, and those are also kind of wet if you rub your hand across it. Not as bad as it was, because I kind of cleaned it up a little bit before I put it back in when I did the timing job. It's got a little rust on there, but that's not too bad. It's mainly on the support plate, but that's a good idea what you're looking for if you have a leak on your system. It's going to be kind of a oily or kind of dark looking section compared to where there's lighter looking sections. As you can see, unfortunately there's lots of little rocks and bugs all in there too. That's what all those little dots are, because Jaguar saw fit to leave a pretty open screen on the grill. Not a whole lot keeping those rocks and stuff from going in there. So hopefully this is not an exercise of futility and I wind up getting a rock in there and it winds up leaking not long after I get it fixed. So first thing we've got to do is, of course, get us a catch, whether it's just a pan or whatever, and get the radiator drained. If you've never drained the radiator on one of these, you will see the radiator drain plug right there. You can kind of see that X back off in that corner. That's the actual radiator drain plug. Unfortunately, on these cars, when you drain it like that, it tends to get all off in this front brace, that red and also the black plastic that you see going across there, that air dam. That gets full of coolant when you drain this. About the only way I found to really do anything about it is simply just take all that stuff off and clean it out afterwards, or take it off beforehand. And you're probably going to clean it anyhow, because I'm sure it's probably going to be full of dirt and whatever else that you picked up along the way during your travels. The radiator is now drained. You can still see it's dripping in a few places, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this cover off. We have 3 Phillips with a large washer right in the middle. Got a plastic clip here. Pair of dikes, just gently grab and pull on it. It'll help pull it apart. Finish popping out the rest of it. We have 4 more clips on the front side here. These simply just have a center push pin, so you have to kind of push the pin in. Don't get too wild with it because it's actually going to pop out on the side. You want to push those out gently so that you can find them on the opposite side when you pull this down. The fender well has 1 more pop rivet out on the edge. Mine was a screw style type. So as you screw the Phillips head plastic screw into the plastic rivet, it spreads the teeth apart. Now that I have all this loose, gently pull these pins down. And don't forget to grab the pins you pop out. And once you get those loose, you should have 4 of these push-in pins with the plastic rivet on the inside. Should have 4 total there. Of course, the coolant may run down on you. You are going to have quite a bit of dirt and grime in here most likely. A good time to go ahead and clean some of that out. I'd had this off not terribly long ago, and I already a lot of trash in here. Part of it, if you drive it, you're going to get dirt and grime and stuff in there. So I'm fixing to disconnect all the electrical from the fans. We've got a connector right there, and we've got another connector right there on that sensor. It's a pressure sensor. And then we've got another one right there on the next fan. So I'm going to get those loose, and that'll get all our electrical disconnected from this assembly. So still underneath, we still have this connector to take loose. This is the transmission cooler line. So we just simply have to get a wrench on that, break it loose. Now it will dribble a little out. We'll just put a cap over it to keep it from draining. Back at the top side, we're going to have to take loose a few more hoses, particularly the ones that go from the AC dryer, the return line on the condenser. We also have to take off this plastic piece here that retains the radiator and all this together into the car. We also have the hoses, the upper and lower radiator hose are going to have to come loose. And there is 1 more line up high for the transmission cooler. These transmission cooler lines are 24 millimeter. They don't have to be super tight. They just need to be good and snug. Of course, there's torque specs out there for these as well. See if we can find those. But they do have an O-ring on them. So it's a flanged hose with an O-ring to seal it up. Like I mentioned on the bottom, I had a rubber cap that I was going to put on there, and I'm going to do the same thing up here at the top. Work it loose. You will have some dribble, especially out of the bottom one, and I'm just going to slide that rubber cap on there to keep anything from getting into that hose or just pouring out of it. So I can tell you from experience, the best way to do this lower radiator hose is to actually take it loose up here and just pull it out with the radiator. It will fit out, because getting down to the clamp down low on the radiator is a true pain in the rear. Easiest way is to unclamp it up here above the thermostat housing, and then just pull the hose out with it. You can do the upper radiator hose whichever way you wish. It will come out as well with the radiator if you wish to leave it all assembled. So these bolts here are a Torx 30, and there are 5 of them across here. My car has been modified with the cool air induction filter. If you do not have that, you have the traditional air box. You may have to remove it to be able to get to some of this stuff. It does cover a fairly large area here, so you may have to get it out of the way to be able to get to some of these cooler lines on the dryer. But your AC dryer is right here next to the radiator, just in front of the air box. Now that that's out of the way, we can go ahead and get our hoses loose. Angled needle nose pliers, those usually come in real handy for these kind of clamps. These are just tension clamps, no screws, so just simply squeeze them down, slide them back. Pliers like this are what I'm talking about. You may or may not have them. Standard pliers can work on these too, but I find that these come in real handy because they do give you such a broad grab. Rotate that up so it's easier to get a hold of. And you can see there how broad of a grab I can get. Nice and easy. Slide it back a good way on the hose. Now we can take that hose loose. My hoses are almost brand new. They've only been on the car a few months, so they're still real nice and soft. Don't have to worry about tearing them. Now if yours has got some age on them, just like the plastic, these hoses and whatnot underneath here, they get hot a lot. This engine gets hot and then it gets cold, gets hot and gets cold. It breaks that down. So just be careful if you start pulling on that and you start hearing cracking and popping. That may mean that you've got a hose that's fixing to tear on you. And if your hose is in that kind of shape, you probably want to be replacing it anyhow. So I had to kind of pull that hose while holding the clamp on that one. I couldn't get to slide back. Do be careful with those clamps, because they will pinch extremely tight. They are substantially smaller than the actual hose diameter, so they do have some good tension on them. AC line's broken loose, because there is an AC line that's crossed here. Has one over here and one on the opposite side. That is a 10mm bolt that connects the AC union here to this lower line that has that sensor that goes across the bottom of the fan cover. And the other one is just right below the upper radiator hose, but you can get down to it even with the upper radiator hose on the car. And those are not bolts, those are actually nuts. So once you get those loose, you may have to give it a little jiggle. And be sure and get your line out of the way. Kind of push it back a little bit wherever you can so that you can get that out. You will want to put some sort of cover on there if you can, and keep anything from getting up into the lines and getting you debris and whatnot into your AC system. Now fortunately, my system was already down. Didn't have to evacuate this time. But of course, before you start anything like this, if you don't have an evacuator, take it by somewhere, get it evacuated properly, and then commence your work. Most likely, you're going to have to take it back to that same person and get it filled. So if you work out a deal with them, you should be able to have them evacuate it, let you do your work, and then take it back to them to get it filled. And they'll charge you one price for everything. Here's that hose out. This was the side on the left side, driver's side. You can see it's got a long stud on there that the nut goes down on. That's where the hose goes in. You got an O-ring there, so you want to make sure you check those O-rings. There's that pressure sensor I was talking about that had the clip on it. And of course, this was on the passenger side up by the dryer or the upper radiator hose. Once again, it's got an O-ring, so you want to make sure and check that one as well. Now the radiator should be ready to come out at this point as a full assembly. So that's the radiator, the condenser, both fans, and the upper and lower radiator hoses. So when we come out, we'll have to be real gentle and make sure we don't hang on any of these hoses that we've taken loose. You're going to lean the radiator assembly slightly to the front of the engine and then go up with it. Now this, of course, is a much easier job if you have the hood off. Quick correction, there are actually two lines over here on this side that we had to take loose. That's the send and receive line for the condenser, are both on this side. That side we took loose so we could get that lower hose off to keep from catching on things. They are both kind of staggered to the side of each other, so you can get to both of those nuts from this side. So the wiring was wrapped around my AC lines on the condenser, so I had to get that unwound. And as you can see, we're kind of coming up at an angle here to be able to get that out. Fortunately, we did find our fender covers, so we were able to put those back on before we took it out. The assembly's out of the car. You can see things a little better. There's your upper connection for your transmission cooler. There's your lower connection for your transmission cooler. And there's that clamp that I was talking about on the lower radiator hose. That's really hard to get to. A lot easier to get to it when it's off the car. You can take the fan off without having to take the radiator. You would just take that loose and that loose. Once you've taken loose all this other stuff we took loose before. Now we also had these clips here, there, there, and there. Those actually hold the wiring loom for the fan motors. So when you're working on that, you want to be sure and get those disconnected before you go to lift it out. So we're fixing to flip it over and take loose the condenser. Here's the other side with the condenser exposed. So we've got 8mm here and one on the other side. We have to take loose these two Torx for this shield that goes on here. I've already actually got a little bit of this stuff loose. So we're just going to take it the rest of the way off. We're using a T30 Torx. There we go. Got our shield out of the way for our lines. 8mm top here, and then the 8mm up here. I had ordered a replacement, but the replacement did not quite fit. I could get it to slide in, but it would not fit properly. So as you see, that just kind of slides up to get out of those teeth. So here's the part that was different on the one I purchased that didn't work out. You see how those are kind of bent outwards and then back inwards. The one I got was actually just straight. So it actually pushed against the jug on the side of the radiator. Would not line up. So just be careful when you're ordering one online. If it looks like it's going to work, you may want to double check, because it was labeled. I contacted the sales. They even confirmed that yes, that should be the right part, but it did not work. Now I don't know these cars well enough to know if maybe they just had them mixed up with a later model where they redesigned it, but I know for the 99 that I have, it would not work.